So downtown has seen a dramatic increase in pedestrian and automobile traffic. Certain areas have become difficult and dangerous for pedestrians to cross the street, and there's a shortage of available parking. This lends itself to people parking too close to corners, which adds to the danger. While the city has proposed various plans, there's a lack of confidence that there will be consistent enforcement. Will you agree to additional traffic calming and street design measures to better ensure pedestrian safety? And what will you do to ensure that parking laws are consistently enforced? For example, residents are told that new buildings won't get street parking permits. So how is this being enforced? And I have a follow-up afterwards.
Okay. Parking. So the short answer is yes. If the DCNA, the short answer is yes. If you have suggestions on more complete streets that we can afford, I am happy to do that. The key there is that we need to figure out that we can afford, ultimately. So if it's entirely ripping up sidewalks and redoing entire massive amounts of blocks, those are some of the challenging things that we probably can't afford specifically. If it is in with a framework that we could find a middle ground, yes, I'm happy to do it, and I think the council is happy to do that. So that's first and foremost. On the parking issue specifically on the corner, we probably could do a better job. Well, let me say we certainly could do a better job of ticketing some of those cars over there. The reality is that there is not a lot of parking here, clearly. So it is a balancing act between being reasonable to residents and ultimately being heavy-handed. And we try to find that balance. It's never perfect. You know, the people who love pedestrian-only environments want us to be enforcing everything aggressively and eliminating cars, and it's very hard to do, frankly. So we try to find the middle ground. If you want us to be more aggressive as a DCNA, you're all here collectively, we have no problem enforcing that ultimately. But when it comes back, that backlash, which ultimately does ensue, my hope is that you guys are as supportive as you are asking for it, because I can say for certain that some of you in this room ultimately will be getting tickets as well, because we've all done it ultimately. But I'm happy, more than happy, to be very aggressive on the parking enforcement. And if that's what the DCNA wants, I'm happy to do it. My suggestion collectively is that I'm not going to leave here today with these individuals saying that we're going to just drop the hammer. My suggestion is that you, over the next month or 2 weeks, at the next meetings, you collectively talk it out on how you want us to enforce it, and then I'm happy to do it. I got no problem with that.
About the new residents coming into bigger developments, we as residents
Her question is that there's supposed to be restrictions on the new developments coming in the high-rise buildings not getting access to street permits. I don't want to say something that I don't know for certain. There's supposed to be enforcement of the parking authority with a list. I can't tell you for certain how good they are on it. I will follow up with you on it.
They're pretty good. I mean, I would say they're pretty good about not giving permits.
They're pretty good about not giving permits because they get a lot of complaints. People who live in the buildings who want permits, and I have to explain, no, it's against the law. I think that part of the problem is that the enforcement hours are from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and you have a 2-hour window that makes it effectively 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And you have people who work in central New Jersey live in one of those buildings. They can park on our streets because they're gone at work during the daytime and there's really no enforcement in the evenings. So I think that's really what the problem is.
Okay, so part 2 of the question. If a developer is supposed to build 150 parking spots but wants to change that to 50 spots, the city considers this to be a trivial deviation to a redevelopment plan as opposed to a major change. The request skips a very important step. It doesn't need approval from our elected city council, unlike a change to a redevelopment plan, because they're considering it trivial. With a show of hands, I'm curious how many people here tonight consider it a major change for a developer to lower the amount of parking being built. For instance, to build 90 spots for 160 units instead of 160 spots. Okay, no, I'm going to finish. Okay, so my question to you is, would you commit to having to have city council approval for all redevelopment plan parking changes / deviations.
Let me say this, because I've been on both sides of this as well. So let me kind of paint a little bit of a different picture on why we do what we do. So before we clap saying that that is the best thing to do, that we just kind of understand both sides of this ultimately. Transit-oriented development in cities is consistent with what we are doing. Every city in the country that focuses or has mass transportation around it is eliminating more than we are the parking requirement. The question is why? Is because they do not want to encourage cars. Now you would say, because some of you have cars here ultimately, you would say, well, that doesn't make sense. Everybody has a car. That happens to not be true. Our planning department audits those buildings and the parking spots to understand who is using them and what is the requirement ultimately. It isn't good planning to require parking spots when then nobody is parking in them and the cars aren't used ultimately and they're not on the streets ultimately. If you look at what is happening in every city across the country that is focused on this, they are not increasing the parking requirement. They are restricting it, more so consistent with what we are doing ultimately. So I just want to paint that picture for you because I understand that it is very easy for people that aren't in this day-to-day to understand, to say, hey, one-to-one kind of makes sense, but there's two sides to that ultimately on why people are doing what they're doing. And it's important to understand those two because, you know, we're building a world-class city. I would argue that every day. And to say that we should be encouraging more cars on the street as we're building isn't really good planning ultimately. And if that's the direction we want to go, again, I'm happy to discuss it with you. I'm not willing to commit today to something that I don't believe in my core is good planning. That said, if you want to have a conversation about it and you think that that's the direction where you want to go, again, it'll work for you. I understand that. But I want you to understand before I say something why I'm saying it. So the short answer is no, I can't commit in this situation because I believe that what we're doing is consistent with cities literally around the country. Yes. The question is.
Can you just guarantee us that it goes before the city council? Can you give us an opportunity to talk to our elected officials about it?
That's fine. I have no problem with that. That's fine.
So I just, I did notice that someone was raising their hand. I want you to just hold on to your